Right. We now come to the 10-minute rule motion. Mr Obese-Jecty.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to require the Secretary of State to prepare and publish a strategy for tackling interpersonal abuse and violence against men and boys and for connected purposes. Mr Speaker, this Labour government has pledged to halve instances of violence against women and girls, an intent that I have no doubt both sides of this House are fully able to support. The aim of this bill is to tackle an aspect of that current violence against women and girls strategy, an aspect that makes no sense and one that is essential is addressed by the government. The violence against women and girls strategy currently includes male victims of violence against women and girls. The government still defines violence against women and girls, or VAWG, as a category of crimes which disproportionately affects women. Therefore, all victims of crimes such as domestic abuse, rape, sexual assault, digital image abuse, forced marriage and honour-based violence, including men and boys, are considered victims of VAWG. I would like to make clear, this bill in no way detracts from the work already done and still to be done in tackling violence against women and girls. This bill is simply to ensure that male victims of those crimes have a dedicated strategy that reflects the differing nature of their circumstances and ensures that male survivors are recognised and receive appropriate support. The current miscategorisation forces male victims into spaces and discussions which may be more appropriately reserved for women. At present, the government has no dedicated strategy to tackling interpersonal abuse and violence against men and boys. In 2019, the previous government published its first ever position statement on male victims and followed this in 2022 with a subsequent addendum on supporting male victims. The change in government and a revised strategy on violence against women and girls presents a new opportunity to devise a parallel strategy for violence against men and boys in lieu of any direction from the government regarding the publication of a new, updated position statement. The Minister for Safeguarding is, as I understand it, currently in the process of rewriting the violence against women and girls strategy for publication later this spring. And to that end, now is the time to legislate for such a change to be formalised. It should be noted that when the government states that it hopes to halve violence against women and girls, the start date for that data currently includes victims who are men and boys. Victims of gender-based violence face many barriers which prevent them from reporting instances of abuse. There is the fear of not being believed. There is the threat that the perpetrator may still pose. The simple fact of not being aware of the services available to help or being aware and not being able to access them. There are too the complexities around the consequences of disclosure, the impact of living arrangements or financial security, and how this can, in turn, lead to instances of coercive control. For men and boys, however, there are additional factors. The shame and stigma of not appearing to be masculine, of being vulnerable, of potentially having your sexuality outed, of being the victim of a crime considered and officially referred to as one which applies to female victims. The majority of men seeking help are those who have coped alone, often for long periods, and are still living with their abusive partners. In these circumstances, those men may need help with housing and finances, and in circumstances also involving dependent children, how they can still maintain their role as a father. Safety planning for this group of men must be initiated at the point of disclosure, as a majority of those seeking help don't return to those providing it following first contact. The Crime Survey for England and Wales, year ending September 2024, showed that 3% of men aged 16 and over were victims of domestic abuse between September 2023 and September 2024, compared to 6.6% of women. According to Women's Aid's 2025 annual audit report, as of May 2024, there were just 50 refuges in England with bed spaces for men. As such, of a total of 63,950 people supported in safe accommodation in that period, only 1,830 were men. There is also a difference in the needs of men who are gay, bisexual or trans. Owing to the complexities of the nature of these relationships, the risk of being outed, of being the victim of prejudice or being disowned by family members, male victims are less likely to report domestic abuse to statutory services. Carlisle and Withers' 2023 survey highlighted that over 70% of gay, bisexual and trans male victims of domestic abuse had never sought support from a statutory service provider. Their statistics are therefore not recorded in any official figures, and as a result, these victims find themselves further isolated, increasing their vulnerability to abuse. Sexual abuse against men is a vastly underreported crime. 1 in 4 adults sexually assaulted in the UK each year is a man. 1 in 10 rapes and 1 in 7 sexual assaults have male victims, according to the Office for National Statistics. 3.5% of boys become victims of child sexual abuse before they turn 16. 1 in 4 victims of child sexual abuse are men. Over 70% of child sex abusers are people known to their victims. Shame, stigma, homophobia, emasculation are all factors in preventing sexual abuse from being reported, and it can often take years for a male victim to report a sexual assault to the police. Male sexual assault survivors are 3 times more likely to tell a family member, friend or colleague than they are to report an incident to the police. ONS data suggests that fewer than a third of male victims of sexual assault have ever disclosed what they have experienced. For straight men, there can also be a hesitancy to disclose abuse, owing to a misconception that men should be physically strong enough to prevent an assault. Male victims of abuse who have been forced to penetrate by a partner can struggle to identify their experience as abuse because it has caused them to be aroused. Rape and sexual abuse should never be minimised because the perpetrator is female. The law currently states that whilst males and females can be the victim of rape, only males can realistically commit the act of rape. The introduction of a force to penetrate sexual offence could therefore address this. Honour-based violence is another factor poorly understood and catered for. Victims of honour-based violence are at greater risk of repeat victimisation and are often at risk from multiple perpetrators, but there is no discrete crime of so-called honour-based violence or abuse defined in our legislation, and so in most instances, male victims will be classified by police as victims of violence without injury or stalking and harassment. Data from the Crown Prosecution Service suggests that around 30% of prosecutions for honour-based violence involve male victims. Additionally, the Forced Marriage Unit has consistently seen that 20% of forced marriage victims are male, and this can often include men from overseas who are forced to marry UK citizens and can find themselves forced into domestic servitude, thus also becoming victims of modern slavery. This time last year, research undertaken by Emeritus Professor Nicola Graham-Kevan of the University of Lancashire published data on how male survivors feel about being categorised as victims of violence against women and girls. 89% stated that it made it harder to seek help. 89% stated that they experienced distress. 88% stated that the government does not care. 80% stated that it was minimising their experiences. 75% stated that it wasn't taken seriously. 73% stated that it wasn't recognised by society. It is clear that the damaging impact of including male victims within a strategy that caters for violence against women and girls means that male survivors cannot identify with that labelling. Organisations such as We Are Survivors, the Men and Boys Coalition, Mankind Initiative have been instrumental in providing support for male victims and advocating for a solution to this issue, and I thank them for the work they have done to highlight this inequality. Last November, the Victims Commissioner, Baroness Helen Newlove, wrote to the Safeguarding Minister outlining many of the same concerns as I have highlighted here. These concerns are not unique. They are shared by the male survivors community. The view of the Victims Commissioner should not go unheeded, nor that of her predecessor, Dame Vera Baird-Casey, who expressed similar views. The purpose of this bill is echoed in those words. I believe it is beyond time for a dedicated men and boys strategy with specific policies, strategic milestones and accompanying funding. A tailored approach for male victims of interpersonal violence is essential to developing their rights and ensuring the ability of appropriate support services. I urge you to seize this opportunity to create both a robust cross-governmental VORG strategy and a separate, comprehensive strategy for men and boys, with clear policies, strategic targets, milestones and sustainable funding arrangements. 6 months later, and with nothing further heard on implementing such a strategy, this bill has been required in order to push the Safeguarding Minister into taking action. My hope is that male survivors of such traumatic violence and abuse can finally be given the focus their plight deserves. I also hope that members on both sides of the House feel that they can support what this bill sets out to achieve, and I thank them all for their time in listening this afternoon.
The question is that the Honourable Member have leave to bring in the bill. The question is that the Honourable Member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Who will prepare to bring in the bill?
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, Sir Roger Gale, Sir Ashley Fox, Charlie Dewhurst, Wendy Morton, David Simmons, Paul Holmes, Rebecca Smith, Bob Blackman, Alison Griffiths, Richard Holden and myself, Mr Speaker.
Mr Obese-Jecty.
Interpersonal Abuse and Violence Against Men and Boys Strategy Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday, 16th of May.
Friday, the 16th of May. Well done, Ben. Right.